Hi there, welcome back to the Bible Talk, a podcast brought to you by the Songdo International Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm your host, Angie Kim. At the time of the recording of this podcast, we are celebrating the Lunar New Year holiday in Korea, and I just want to say once again, Happy New Year. In the Bible Talk, we discuss a wide range of topics relating to Christianity, the church, and the Bible. It is an open and safe space to talk about the questions that we may have had at some point in our daily Christian walks, but we did not get an opportunity to freely discuss those within church, at home, or elsewhere. Today's episode features Angie Kim, myself, David Cho, and Samuel Dana. We discussed our thoughts around some of the misconceptions about God that people have. So please stay with us.
Welcome to the Bible Talk. For today's podcast, we will be talking about some of the misconceptions about God. Nowadays, many people have wrong ideas about who God is. So today, maybe we can clarify or debunk some of those misconceptions or wrong ideas about God. The first one, famous one, is that God is somehow a brutal being. I heard this a lot from atheists or non-believers where they take these stories from the Old Testament time where God orders Israelites to annihilate all the people who were previously dwelling in Canaan. Now, when we look at the New Testament, it talks about loving our neighbors. But we see seemingly a contrary story or principle in the Old Testament. How can we best explain this to other people?
From what I know, I think sometimes I don't blame people for the conception they have about God. I think knowing God in the first place is something that is about conviction and about faith, because no one has seen God. So before you believe in who even God is and what he does and all these misconceptions about him, then it means you have to go more deeper into the carnal mind, like how human beings think. Because even if you are a Christian and somebody asks you, oh, can you even prove to me who God is? Sometimes you have to explain to him in faith and in terms of, because people want evidence as science wants it. But what I think is who God is about how we encounter him as individual, because it's about my heart to heart with God. And sometimes the knowledge of God, according to what my father knows or my friends know, may be different from what I know. And I know today we just learned about pretense. Maybe I may come to church just to pretend to my friends that I belong to a good society or an association. Or I go to church because my parents go to church. That's why I'm going, just to show society, oh, I also belong to something. But when it comes to personal level, what is God to me? Is there I will now know who God is. And to them, maybe they may not have encountered God in any way. And some of them, it also comes from background, how they were brought up. Maybe they come from a society where it's about philosophies, where it's about science. They want to see things before they believe. And that is where this issue comes in. And sometimes too, I don't dispute them, even though the Bible tells us he who is of God should have love, for God is love. You get that? And for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should have everlasting life. So it just shows God love manifested in all this. And we also see the love of God in creation. That is when we are Christians and believe in the creation story, because I know even now it's under attack. People are saying, oh, God couldn't create the whole universe in 7 days. You get it in 6 days. So it's so mysterious and those things. So I think, but when you look at it from another perspective, which they always want to justify, for instance, people see the Old Testament God as different from the New Testament God. Even Christians today, those who begin to beat the trump card of grace, that we are now living under grace, we don't have to obey the laws, or in the beginning, that particular God, even we have Christians today who have that belief, that anything that people did, they got punished. You get that? You sin, you die. Don't touch this. You touch it, you do this. Or everything had to be accounted for, and the punishment was instant. You find it in the days of Lot and the wife and the family who was a cousin to Abraham. Then you see the situation where the whole city of Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed just because they sinned. So somebody was, oh, if God is really loving, why should he destroy them? He should have given them another chance. But even within that place, because I'm a Christian, I was, oh, they were given several opportunities and they exhausted everything. He did everything. You know, when the angels were negotiating with Lot, Abraham and Lot about, oh, how many people he really wanted to save, there were these instances that showed even the love of God for them. But you know, whilst God is love, God is also just. We shouldn't try to combine the two. There's no compromise. He loves us. He gives us the long rope. You either obey or you face the consequences. For the wages of sin is what? Death. So when the judgment is due, after he has given the long rope and you refuse to obey the long rope, or you refuse to grab the grace within, or the love that was shown within this period, then the punishment comes. But people misconstrue it as, oh, you know, but God shouldn't have done that. Why should God destroy the whole world and leave only Noah in the family? Why should he do this? But when he came to the New Testament, oh, you know, it was all about grace and nobody. So it depends on their level of faith and their level of belief. That's what I think. And sometimes, do we blame them? It depends. Sometimes to some are just stubborn. I know some, they just want to dispute everything about God. Even if God comes down and live with them today, they will still say, that's not even God. You know, that's the human nature. Briefly, that's what I think I can say about that.
Yes. So I also remember these occasions where, for instance, I went to an Adventist academy in the States, and I was following like a student missionary. So she was trained in giving Bible studies, going door to door, and I was following her, you know. So we visited people in their homes together. This was, you know, many, many years ago when I was still a teenager. And I think one of the common issues that we found is that there are people who are interested in learning more about God. So what do? They start reading the Bible from the very beginning. And guess what? The book of Genesis, as we know, some parts are really kind of hard to digest, even, you know, for these non-believers, right? Because Samuel, you mentioned Sodom and Gomorrah. Those were wicked days, right? Full of sins. And so when these people thinking that, oh, the Bible is the Holy Bible, and they expect to find something really noble and holy and sacred, but then it also reflects the reality of sin and what was going on back then. And so when these people read those passages, I think it kind of discouraged them. Is this, you know, what the world is about? I'm not interested in, you know, continuing on with my Bible studies, or, you know. And I have to confess, I myself, when I was studying to be baptized, I would see these problematic passages, should I say, and I would ask myself, wow, you know, really, like, to that degree, God had to just wipe them out. And, you know, I think even today in this world, there are some totalitarian governments, as we know, and that are really ruthless when it comes to punishing people. And I know some governments, they have this law that says if, let's say, a parent
sins, and commits an offense in society, then the 3 generations of that family need to be punished. So they can go to prison for that. And so, in this age and today's world, and so you would think, wow, that's really extreme. And guess what? In the Bible, there are some stories where, yes, so I was saying, it was hard for me to also understand why God allowed those things to happen. Like wiping out an entire race or certain people, because I don't know. I would think, but what about those babies or children who are so young, innocent? I mean, do they need to also be punished for the sins of their parents or their grandparents or ancestors? And like becoming Adventist, I think many of my questions have been answered, but still I do know it's kind of difficult. So you do need to dig deep, as Samuel said, and you need to have this personal relationship with God, and you need to be really committed to understanding the Bible from the beginning to the end in its entirety, not just selecting some passages out of context and try to make sense of it all, So once a pastor that I know likened the sin, the how deadful the sin is, to tangerines, let's say. There's a box of tangerines. We all enjoy tangerines, right? Korea has some of the best tangerines, I would say, from Jeju Island and all that. But if there is one tangerine in a box that goes rotten, what happens? It affects, the other surrounding tangerines as well. So he kind of likened the dreadfulness of sin to that kind of phenomenon, And so I do know that God had this grand plan to save the human race, who has fallen, obviously. And for that purpose, he needed the people of Israel to stay pure and stay true to God. He needed those people to be faithful to him, because through that people of Israelite, he wanted to bless the other people, the Gentiles, and that's how salvation would come about. But of course, they kind of failed to do that, and so I do think in the process of it all, God needed to remove these factors that would make people stumble, and the things that would kind of get in the way of his grand plan for human salvation. So yes, what I'm trying to say is I know now better because I also spent a lot of time studying the Bible, searching the Bible myself, but it could be difficult for a lot of people, especially trying to understand the Bible, try to make sense of it all on their own, right? But I also think people should really be on this journey, on this mission to find it out themselves, rather than simply trying to base their faith on what other people say about God, what they know about God, because it could be dangerous. Not everybody or not every church leader is really perfect, So I think we should always be humble. There's always something more to learn. And we, in our human weakness, we can be quite limited in the degree to which we understand the scripture. But so we need to be praying, we need to come with a humble heart, asking God to please show us what are your true characters, God, and then teach us of something that we didn't know before. So yeah, that's my 2 cents, and if any one of you want to take it, yeah, please.
So when I heard these accusations or the wrong ideas about God, I also looked deep into the scriptures, and I found that when God punishes anyone or any people, his punishments are usually involved with instant death. At least there's mercy in it. What I'm trying to say is when we read Greek mythology or other pagan mythology, although those gods are not real, but we can clearly see how we human beings understand about superiority or power. So when we look at Greek mythology, we see Sisyphus or Prometheus. They're being tortured for eternity for rebelling against God. But look at those people who rebelled against God, like Pharaoh or Jezebel or other people. They got punishment, but they all got instant punishment, instant death. When even Jezebel, she got instant death. Although her corpse was mutilated, but still she didn't suffer that long. So all those people who rebelled against God didn't suffer that long. But when we look at human history too, when you look at history books, we see how brutal we human beings can be toward other people who are opposing us. We see, like, I'm not sure if I can go in details about this. Like, some people are amputated and they're being tortured. They don't just kill someone instantly, because they want to show how they can punish others with cruel, like slow death is the usual punishment for someone who rebel against authority. But God never does that. And even when I looked at God's dealing with Satan, he rebelled against God, but look at how God is dealing with him. He didn't punish him instantly. Of course, there's another reason for that. And but there are brutal deaths recorded in the Bible, where we see a concubine of someone, I forgot his name, but she was raped and killed by Benjamites. I forgot where that story was in the Bible. And we see other instances like that, but those instances were not God's punishment. Rather, it was seemingly God's condonement, and it was Satan's interference. So we see sometimes in the Bible, or nowadays too, where God seems like he is not intervening, and so people have this another wrong idea about God, which says that God does exist, but he may not care about what's happening around the world, here on earth. So we see in some countries, like in totalitarian countries or in...
No, it's fine.
Yeah. So when you look at those countries, we see how people are treated. And how can we explain these incidences to other people? They ask, where is God?
Yes, I like the end parts of it. It tries to also answer most of these existing questions, and especially what we ourselves, including me, have. You know, God deals with human beings instantly. We complain. God gives a long rope to other people. We say, where are you, God? Sometimes we see all these terrible things happening around us in the world. People are killing each other. People are oppressing other people. Then people come in and say, oh, where is that God you people talk about? Why does he allow all these things to happen? We see innocent souls suffering at the hands of their tormentors. Then we ask. I know we see in the Bible about this Old Testament thing when people got punished instantly, right? But today, we know also that the root of all this evil is also coming through Satan. And it all started in heaven when Lucifer rebelled against God, right? Then people come and ask, why did God even allow Lucifer to come in and be with us so that we are suffering the consequence of what he should have done to him? People are saying, oh, why didn't God kill him in the first place and allow him to come down? And now we are suffering because he allowed him. Then if God had killed him, and we read through the Bible, oh, there was one gentleman, he was so nice, he was so handsome, he could sing in several voices, he was a delight in heaven, and he was able to convince even 1/3 of the heavenly angels, and they allowed Jesus, God, he rebelled against God, but God killed him. We would have accused God. Why did you kill him? Why didn't you allow him to come today? So you see, that is a dicey situation. And just as I mentioned in the beginning, I also mentioned that whilst God is love, God is also just. He tells us that this is the rule. You cross this line, the system is there to get it punished. Because personally, just as you made the confession, I have a confession to make that sometimes I ask myself, apart from innocent people suffering, if you like watching this, how animals interact in the safari, you know, especially you see a bull or you see an antelope being chased by a lion. You know, lions, how they eat the animals or they kill the animals is a bit okay because they have to survive, right? They bite it from the throat. Normally, that's how the lions bite, to kill it before they eat the meat. But there is this particular one, the wild dogs, the wolves, not the wolves, there's another one. It tears the meat like that. They start from the stomach. So they never kill the animal. They start eating from the stomach, and the animal is alive whilst they are taking the intestines, everything. So I asked myself, so why did God allow this? Can't God make this animal eat something else by eating another animal in this wicked way? So every time I normally have it on Instagram, I watch it, and they show it in Namibia, it comes on. So you see that even in the jungle, the place is so crazy that the animals are pursuing each other. And some of them, just as I mentioned, there are this particular, they are not the wolf, I've forgotten, they have some black dots on them. The way they kill other animals is just too terrible. And you know, when they meet a bigger animal, they come like ahead, like 5 or 6, then they start, even some, they start from the tail, then they bring out the intestines, eating whilst alive. And this bull or this antelope is suffering till it dies. So why didn't God even make another thing? And you know, and the crocodiles are in the river. The crocodiles have to wait for animals to come and drink water, and they catch them and eat. Why can't they eat something else? Then it comes back to another thing, because I believe in God. I know that, oh, you know, this is just a manifestation of how sinful our world has become, because that was not the original intention of God. You get that? Because if we had not seen all this, and everybody's, oh, there is sin, and everybody's enjoying, I'll ask myself, so what is sin at all? If everybody was enjoying, everything is fun, I don't see anything evil in the world, I would say, oh, then it means sin is really good, right? But all these wicked things happening in front of my eyes, and people are complaining, where is that God? As a Christian, I come back to say, oh, there is really God, because he told me that this is not the original creation he made. But because of sin, I see all this happening. And there is a promise that if I live a good life and lean on him, in the end, when he comes back, he's going to restore the world to its original state, where I will not be seeing these animals eating each other, where I will not be seeing other human beings discriminating against each other, where I will not be seeing several wars everywhere, where governments plan to kill each other. So that's what I get from it as a Christian when I sit back to reflect. Otherwise, on the surface, if I don't go deeper, I just feel that, oh, that I mean God is really somebody wicked. You get that? If you use the human emotions without the faith in the Bible or your background in God, you are going to condemn God as they do. So sometimes I don't blame them. For lack of knowledge, they say, we perish. So that's what I would like to say about that. So that's my one personal confession I have on that particular thing. If I watch it, it looks so terrible. But I sit back and say, oh, why can't God do something about these animals? It's not their fault. So that's what I think, yeah.
So as far as I understand, there's this thing called a rule of engagement. This is something how theologians speculate. When we read the story of Job, we get a hint of this concept where God sometimes allows certain things to happen, where he allows Satan to do what he wants to a certain degree, and that's when brutal things happen. And we can see why God does that. We can never fully understand until we get to heaven, but we get a glimpse of ideas why God is allowing sometimes those things to happen, like Samuel just mentioned. since we talked about also about this punishment, people have this idea, another wrong idea about God, that God is somehow, he's going to punish people who don't believe in him with eternally burning hell. How can we best explain this to those people? So they say that just because we don't believe him, I only, even if I sin for like 100 years, because nowadays most people live up to 100 years old, and I only sin for 100 years, then I get to be punished for eternity. They say that it's not fair. Along with that, they say, continue to say that God is not just. He's cruel.
Yes, I've also had an encounter where people discuss this issue of eternal fire and the issue about people going to burn for maybe 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years. It might be difficult to give the exact time people are going to burn, but what the Bible is certain about is the wages of sin is death. Whether you die for once or you die for, there's going to be death. And if we want to reflect on what the Bible says and the examples from the Bible, you know, this first death, the Bible considers it as what? Sleep. But the one where God is going to reward each human being according to their reward, their deeds, will be that people will be condemned based on their deeds or that. But that death, I don't think when God takes the righteous people to heaven and he rains fire on this planet to cleanse it from its current stage, people are going to, the world is going to be burning for that 1,000 years. I don't think, maybe God doesn't need 1,000 years to really clean the earth. And when he wanted to, we can get examples from just like Sodom and Gomorrah. When he wanted to burn that place, the place is not still burning today. The people were punished. There was a just punishment, and the people got their reward, but it ended. So the people are not still burning. So we can learn lessons from that. And it's one of the lessons we always get from the Bible. When the water came to destroy the earth, according to the Bible, during the days of Noah, we know it rained and the water covered the earth, and it took several days, over 40 or something days, I've forgotten exactly, for the whole earth to get restored. But in that case, it didn't take forever, because if it had to take forever, then it means God really doesn't have the power to do what he wanted to do. So, but what I will learn from the Bible is just that, because even according to the Bible, when the righteous are taken and God restores everything, he will bring them back and they will live forever. So in that case, people are not good. There's nothing like eternal. It could be, once they are dead and punished, that is it. So there wouldn't be, you'll be burning every day in the fire, tormenting. Maybe that's another deep kind of spirituality or spiritualism kind of thing. That's what I think. Yeah. Thank you.
So according to what we understand as SDAs, there's no such thing as eternally burning hell. But we can talk more about this in another podcast episode. For those listeners out there, I would recommend a useful website, helltruth.org. We will leave a website link, URL, below our comment section or below our video. So maybe you can have a better understanding about this eternally burning hell and why it is not true.
So when you read the book of Jude, chapter 1, verse 7, in relation to Sodom and Gomorrah, he says, even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. So it mentions eternal fire, but it doesn't mean they are still burning forever. Yes, so this is just what we're giving.
Because if those people will suffer eternally, they should have a supernatural bodies, which Bible doesn't mention that at all. So I think we've talked enough for today's podcast. Have a nice holiday, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Bible Talk by the Songdo International Seventh-day Adventist Church. Please leave your comments and questions as always on our YouTube channel, The Bible Time, or on our Facebook page, Songdo Adventist Church. If there is a question that you would like us to discuss in a future podcast episode, also please let us know. We'll be back with more insightful and interesting dialogues that matter for the Christian youth today, so stay tuned. That's all for now, signing off from Songdo, Republic of Korea. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.